So good morning, everyone. I'm going to officially call our meeting to order, and we're going to begin with a roll call, starting at my right.
Polly Cornez, industry member.
Steve Weeks, public member.
Lisa Tong, public member.
Joseph Federico, industry member.
Dr. Carrie Williams, industry member.
Coco Lachine, public member.
Jackie Crabtree, industry member.
Okay, so we have established a quorum, and we're going to move forward with our agenda, which are my remarks. And I just want to welcome everyone to our first meeting of the year 2018, and I'm excited to continue to serve on the board and looking forward to working with the rest of my fellow board members to get some stuff done this year. So the next item is the annual election of our officers. So I'm going to ask if any of our board members have any nominations.
Can we just clarify how many positions are available?
We are going to be doing nominations for our vice president as well as our president of the board this year.
I would like to put forth that I feel Dr. Carey's done a great job this last year, and I'd like her to continue on as her role in president, as well as nominate Lisa Tong for vice president, if anybody.
I second that nomination.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. I will accept the nomination as well.
I will accept the nomination.
Okay, so do we do,
We have to
Any
call for
other?
1 second.
any other nominations?
Are they researching something?
Did I break a rule?
Just making sure.
Oh, okay. Oh, for the continuation of presidency?
So we're good.
Good. No more than two.
Okay, we're good to go.
All right.
So once again, are there any additional nominations? Okay, well, seeing none, do we vote? Yes, we vote.
Yeah.
I'll start to my left.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Coco Lachine, yes on both.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Polly Cornez, yes.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you, everyone. Well, I'm very excited to continue to serve as the board president, to have Miss Lisa Tong by my side. So since I already have the gavel, we will continue our meeting, and next we'll have, if there are any board members who have any remarks they would like to give this morning. Yes, Mr. Weeks.
I have some show and tell. I just wanted to say that in December, in order to do my homework on the board, beginning on the board then, that I visited the Glendale Testing Center and spent a small amount of time out there, and I was really impressed with the numbers that go through that center. I mean, 100 a day coming in for various types of testing, for various types of licensing. It was they handled it well. And then a few days later, I did a ride along with Inspector Espinosa down in Orange County, and you really get to see the front line. I mean, seeing the inspections in person before going to a DRC is absolutely critical, because you see the hard work they do and the actual protection of the public that they actually are responsible for. But I was very impressed with the job done by her and our other inspectors, and boy, they have an important job, and it's our responsibility to try and bolster them as well we can and make sure there are additional inspectors brought on as soon as we can.
Yes, I agree. Are there any additional remarks from our board?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to the addition of the sexual harassment training that we are working on. And keep in mind that sexual harassment covers all genders, and especially this year with the Me Too movement and the Time's Up. I was at the women's march, actually in New York, and we waited hours and hours and hours, but when it got rolling, it was absolutely uplifting. And so I'm really looking forward to implementing this at some point in our industry.
Thank you so much, Coco. Are there any additional remarks? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which are public comments that are not on the agenda. So are there any comments from the public regarding items that are not currently on our agenda?
Morning Board, Fred Jones, Professional Beauty Federation, California. Just another reminder that our 18th annual Welcome to Our World event is Monday, April 30th from 3 to 6:30 p.m. Just a block and a half from the state capitol.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Gary Federico. That's not on the agenda that I'd like to bring forward would be the frustration that I think good hairstylists, barbers have. It's something that's obviously not new, but it's the fear of it. It's the fear that due to the fact that we work hard here, but we have another agency that's above us that chooses not to work hard. What I'm fearing is not only deregulation, but I'm also fearing that in time, as our industry here, it seems like our powers are becoming or basically beginning to be stripped away. And what I'm talking about, where we have a state capitol over there, the legislature, where they want to go ahead and force the fact of a license. What do they call that? That license that allows someone to go anywhere to do hair services. I forget the name of that terminology.
Personal
The
service.
PS
Personal services. Okay, I mean that's just basically one particular thing. What I see on an ongoing basis are outside people wanting to either strip away part of our scope or add a lot of things. Or if you take a look at the industry right now, what's going on in salon establishments, there's a lot of things that are being done in services that are underneath our scope. I fear that the people in the state capitol, I believe we definitely need continuous education, but they don't want it. But I believe obviously our industry needs it. So I'm just trying to say is that I'm getting really, really sick and tired of the Capitol telling us what we need to do. They're not there to strengthen us in any way, shape, or form. I think they're there to weaken us in every which way. In time, possibility, and I'm not trying to be the fear monger here, but in time, as we get weaker and weaker and weaker, they're going to call down on deregulation. I can't understand why, which I do understand if I just bring it up, why our poor inspectors are being paid so low. I don't understand why we don't have the required number of inspectors that we need in our state of California to go after all this unlicensing activity with a number of establishments out there that our inspectors should grow to the amount that they can reasonably inspect on a yearly basis. It's those people, I hate to refer to that, it's those people over there that tell us no, no, no. And I would hope that this year, as we continue, I know we're sort of clawing at it, but we need to get a bigger blade, a bigger knife, a bigger gun, bigger whatever it is, begin to make the necessary changes that we need to continue to survive and become stronger so that we can support our industry where they don't begin to take more and more and more away. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a report from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Hello.
This is it's my first podium experience here. We usually have the table going. President Williams,
Good morning.
Executive Officer North, thank you for the opportunity to address the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology here today. My first chance to come by and say hello to you. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christopher Castrillo, and I'm the new Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services here at the Department of Consumer Affairs. By way of background, spent the last 5 years in legislative advocacy over at the state capitol, most recently working as a legislative advocate where I covered a variety of policy areas, including higher education, local government, healthcare, foster youth, to name a few. I've also worked on candidate and initiative campaigns in both Oregon and California. Very, very excited to be here at DCA now, and this first 4 months have been incredibly educational. Been learning a lot about what each of our programs do, including the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. So again, appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you today. Don't want to take up too much of your time, just want to provide you with a few updates from the department. 2 weeks ago, on January 29th, we had our first Directors Quarterly Meeting of the year. We had over 40 attendees with 35 of our programs represented. This meeting was an opportunity in big part to talk about some items that we're excited about in 2018 to begin working on with respect to our strategic plan. We provided updates from our legal, budget, and my office, the Department of Board and Bureau Services, on some projects that we're going to be working on here in 2018 that we're really excited to get started on. So we appreciate your input, the executive officer's input and the board's input, and that continued participation in these directors' quarterly meetings. We're going to have some future dates set for those, and as soon as we have those set, we'll provide those to the board and your staff. Continuing on with sort of the meeting theme, we're going to be having an executive officer brown bag later on this month. That's going to be Wednesday, February 28th. We do the series in conjunction with Solid. These are structured social gatherings which provide a forum for transferring knowledge, building trust, and establishing networking relationships with all of our EOs. And this one will include a presentation on employee engagement and a formal presentation on the FLD, the Future Leadership Development Program's team projects. Just a quick note on that, the department's Future Leadership Program, its inaugural cohort continues to make great strides. They're actually going to be, the inaugural cohort will be graduating on March 7th. They've been participating in special leadership development exercises in conjunction with a mentor. Just 2 weeks ago, they met with Governor's Appointment Secretary, Mona Paschal. We think this is a fantastic program. It provides opportunities for staff at each of our boards and bureaus to begin cultivating the future leaders of the department. We've been really excited with how this inaugural year has gone, and we look forward to getting it up and going again after March. Last quick note for me, I'm trying to do a mental check in my head if anybody needs it, but we have set our dates for our required board member orientation training for 2018. Our first date's going to be March 21st. Then we'll have our next sessions on June 6th, September 18th, and December 5th. Don't worry if you didn't write all that down. We'll make sure that you have all of the dates. We've been also embarking on a new monthly Office of Board and Bureau Services newsletter where we cover all of this information and more. And then just as a reminder, with respect to the board member orientation training, that is required for new and reappointed board members within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to the board. It's a one-day training. It's 8 hours. We think we pack in a lot of really good, important information for all of our board members, details the important functions and the responsibilities of all of our board members across DCA. So if you have any questions about that training, any other required trainings, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or my office. We have our Assistant Deputy Director, Karen Nelson, in the audience, as well as our other Deputy Director back at DCA, Patrick Lee, with our expanded Office of Board and Bureau Services. Our goal is to be incredibly responsive to your board and all of our boards across DCA, so please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and look forward to the rest of your proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we are now going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our executive officer report. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Underwood.
Thank you. So in your packets are our statistics, starting with our applications received for the most recent quarter, October through December. Going on, we have our licenses issued, our current license population, and then we have a comparison of our licenses issued for the last 5 years. And moving forward, we have our examination results next, followed by our disciplinary review committee statistics.
A quick question on examination results. Obviously what jumps out is the low Hispanic.
Right.
pass I assume we're addressing this question, see what we can do to help in that area. Yeah, I was concerned on the low Hispanic pass rate. And I'm assuming that we are doing something to help in this area.
We have done a lot this is historic, that it's been right around this number for cosmetology, around 37% pass rate. And we have translation guides now available. We had hoped that would help to see some increase in the numbers. We haven't yet. We have, the exam is translated. We've talked to schools about what we could do to assist in trying to get that pass rate up. We've talked to the candidates themselves who have failed the test. Would you take it again in Spanish? They choose to take it again in Spanish. We've done extensive data research to try to find a pattern, to see if we could target some area that we could assist in, and our data hasn't really revealed anything. We do see it a lot from people coming from outside of the country. They tend to have a higher failure rate, but it's not a strong enough data that really points just to that being the only reason. So we continue to look at it in every aspect and talk to schools about it, but so far we haven't really been able to pinpoint exactly how to get that pass rate higher.
I would assume that wouldn't be necessarily unique to California.
Right. And we have reached out to several other states and talked to them as well as our national testing organization. We are currently doing a national exam review that is required to be reported to the legislature that you'll all be hearing about in the coming months this year. And that is one aspect that they will be looking at as well, is that pass rate.
Christy, I don't remember the last numbers, but can you venture a guess on why the barbering class seems to do much better than the rest? It's because it's a 68%, and I actually think that these numbers are slightly higher from the last report.
No, I don't know why, but I will tell you the barbers are increasing big time right now. Everything is about barbers, so I don't know if schools are adding barber courses.
You're just talking in regards to the sheer volume of applications.
Right. So I think the barber candidate pool has grown, and it's pretty exciting, and I think people are doing better as a result of that. We went to the ISSE show in Long Beach, and it was pretty much barbers and lashes. So it was really interesting.
No, I also realized that because the base of the number of people who actually took the test was much lower, that's why it drove the percentage higher.
Right.
But I was just curious. Thank you.
I have a question. I don't know if we collect the information for the test takers, but have we looked at the demographics for those who pass versus those who do not, such as age or generation or any of those other specific factors?
I don't know that we've pulled age, but we've looked at almost every other aspect, because we tried to see if we could target even a certain area in California, and that maybe then we could have some targeted outreach, but that didn't show us anything either.
Lisa, I don't think we're allowed to ask age, in our questionnaires.
We do require age, but we've not ever pulled data on age.
We require
We
age
require date of
information?
birth.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just because, doing research on different ethnic segments, sometimes we do see a difference between first generation and second generation. I don't know if that would be a factor to look at.
I think
for
we could pull
this.
it and see if it shows us anything.
Okay.
So moving on is our DRC stats are next. Which, for those of you who have been on the board a while, are noticing how great our DRC stats look. And then our enforcement stats as well. I'll pause for questions.
Well, I actually, when reviewing all of our stats, just wanted to confirm that the application investigations, that huge jump, is just a symptom of what I know we're going to be discussing a little later, which is the diploma mills or the selling.
You are absolutely right.
My question also, at the bottom of the page, where it says establishment with violations, it's just eyeballing calculation, it seems to account for about 70% of all the,
Right.
is that unusually high, or is that, we're saying that 70% of establishment that were received citations?
No, I don't think that's high at all, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think it
Is that
might be a little
alarming?
low.
Is that alarming?
No, I think we have so many violations to look for in salons that, quite honestly, sometimes when if you get to a salon that has no violations, I think that's great. Unfortunately, most have violations. So 70 is actually, to me, I think a little low.
So Christy, I have a question on the amount of the complaints that we receive. Is it broke down to what the complaints are?
We do have that, right? We can provide that information. Mhm.
What the complaints are in our industry on the.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have a category, so it's, it's going to be like infection
Sure.
via.
would be curious to know what's high, what's low.
Okay, next is our budget update. We continue to monitor our travel because of the executive order that's still in place. And then you have our projected year expenditures. And I wanted to make a note that, you see a lot of red to the right. This is historic that we see red to the right. And it's, we are going to be looking to try to realign our line items so that hopefully we can make it more accurate. Our bottom line is always very standard and kind of the same. We usually spend about the same on an annual basis, but it just takes working with DCA's budget office to get these actual line items set to what we actually spend. So hopefully that's something that'll be corrected.
Is it the examination lines, one of those lines?
Right.
Yeah, that's huge, yeah.
Right.
And are all funds for this comes from,
Licensing fees.
all of this?
Right.
22 mil?
Right.
Wow.
Licensing fees, renewal fees.
So
any
of it's not from the government, the taxes?
Oh, correct. All from us.
Just to give me an idea, why would they want to deregulate us? Because it's about money, right? So part of what their thought process would be.
Well, I think the thought process might just be that it's not needed, is where people are going in that direction nationally. But, and unfortunately, a lot of people think of cosmetology and barbering as haircuts.
Right.
So there's so much more. Haircuts is just one tiny aspect of everything our licensees do. So
Taking into account, wouldn't the Senate and legislative want to see, obviously, what we're doing and what the complaints are that we're protecting the consumers?
yeah.
To take that into consideration, because I understand, I mean, I've been reading
Well,
this
they
for
should.
years. Right, so,
right. And that's definitely, in this year, we're going to be preparing our Sunset Review Report. So that's going to have all that information. It's going to be very extensive to show everything that we do. It's basically, the Sunset Review Report is to prove who we are and what we do and why we're needed. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that coming in the next board meetings this year.
good.
Mhm.
Great.
Moving on, we have our outreach events that we attended. I did attend with staff, and we were lucky to have a board member, Lisa Thong, was with us. At Assembly Member Santiago had a town hall down in Little Korea. Is it called Little?
Koreatown.
Koreatown. So they had invited a group of owners, establishment owners. It was really well done, I thought, and it was really great to reach out to quite a large group. We were able to speak to establishment owners and give a presentation on how to not get cited and kind of who we are. It was really successful, I think, really good event.
Yeah, can I just say that Christy did a really great job presenting, especially our top violations, and there were so many questions. I felt like the attendees were really appreciative
Yeah.
of the time spent with us directly. I heard somebody mention that it's kind of rare to be able to have that opportunity. So I think the staff did a really great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a pretty positive event. And then our last item in this topic is our renewal questionnaire that we have that shows the difference of, we ask people at renewal time if they're working in the industry, if they're an employee, an independent contractor, or a salon owner. So that's that information there.
Okay, no questions. All right. So now we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, which are the approval of the board meeting minutes from our October meeting. So if everyone has not had a chance to review the minutes, take a moment and then I'll need a motion of approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, made a motion to approve the minutes, sorry. Didn't have my mic on.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have an approval and a second. Is there any comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll move for a vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cortness, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coalition, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes, our minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is our discussion and possible action regarding our 2018 board member guidelines. So I'll turn this over to Ms. Underwood.
So, normally we meet in January, so at the beginning of every year, we re-adopt our board member guidelines and procedures. So you have that in your packet. The only changes that have been made in this is the new travel guide and some names of representatives of the department. Board meeting dates are put in here, and then the training schedule as well for board members. Other than that, it's exactly the same.
Okay. Are there any?
Require approval?
Yes.
Okay, so I move to approve.
I second.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Any comment? Seeing no comment, I'll move for a vote, starting to my right again.
Polly Cortness, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coalition, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. Next, we're going to move on to our appointment of committee members. So you'll see in your packets under tab 10 our current committees and who are part of those committees.
So, and just a note, we did this in October because we had added a new board member. So this is what the committees stand as of today. So you're welcome to re-adopt as is. That's why we provided a list unless there's members that wish to change their membership.
Is anyone interested in changing their membership on a committee? Okay, so I move that we re-adopt our standing committees as they appear in our packets.
Second.
Okay, so we'll start with the vote to my right.
Polly Cortness, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coalition, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Next, we're going to get an update on the Health and Safety Advisory Committee. And then we have to appoint some 2018 members.
Right. So for the update, we did provide a memo in your packets because the Health and Safety Committee met the day after the last board committee. So this is the first time the full board has heard what they did in that committee. We had some presentations at the Health and Safety Advisory Committee on the environmental impact of beauty products. We talked about disinfection options that were available and understanding piece rate law. We had presentations on all of those items. The committee did make some actions that to update the Know Your Workers' Rights publication. That's going to be coming up in another agenda item here today. And then the committee also made a motion that they recommend the board add the use of wipes to disinfect foot spa basins that use liners and non-electrical instruments, workstations, and remove the word hospital from the board materials. So that was a recommendation from the Health and Safety Committee to this board. So that would be open for discussion for the board today to determine if they would want staff to prepare regulatory language for those items.
Was the term hospital basically applied when it was used for like hospital grade disinfectant?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so what is the alternative language that they're suggesting?
It's the removal of that word hospital.
Okay, so what do we define our disinfectant as then?
It's still defined as with the virucidal,
Okay.
EPA registered. It's
Okay.
just that the word
portion has been
hospital
removed.
shouldn't be in there.
Okay.
I agree on that.
And I believe one of the issues was it really doesn't, what we have defined as EPA, we
Yeah.
don't need to have the word hospital
Yeah,
listed.
it doesn't need the additional, I understand.
Okay, so ultimately, if we need a motion to just allow staff to develop the regulatory language.
Right, and then we would bring that back to the board at the next meeting.
So
I
are there any
motion.
questions? Okay, go ahead.
I motion for it.
Okay, I second. So are there any comments?
Yeah, it says here that the section 10 is going to be added, and it's still being written, right? About the physical and sexual abuse part?
No,
That's the
that's
second one.
coming.
Right, that's what I meant, that it's still,
It's in here.
it's in here?
Yeah.
I didn't, s-
We're under tab.
It's gonna be under tab 12.
oh, okay, am I ahead? Okay, I'll withdraw my comment for now.
So are there any questions or public comment regarding the motion to allow staff to develop regulatory language regarding what was discussed during the Health and Safety Advisory Committee? No. Okay, so we're going to vote, starting at my right.
Polly Coordinates, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes, and we need to get our committee members for this year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we need 2 board members. I would like to still be a part of the committee for 2018.
I'd like to stay on the committee as well.
Okay, and we need an alternate.
Where's it located?
We usually have 2 a year, and we usually have one in north and one in south.
I can be alternate.
Okay, so we need a motion. Okay, so I move that myself and Ms. Lisa Tong are the 2018 Health and Safety Advisory Committee members, and that Ms. Jackie Crabtree is the alternate.
Second?
Okay, so we'll vote, starting to my right.
Polly Coordinates, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
And
And,
then there's a second part to that same item,
okay,
and that is that the board by motion will need to establish if the following committee compilation meets with their approval. So that's the industry members we are asking for, and then public members, we have a scientist representation, medical professional, Department of Public Health, we are adding a specialist in physical and sexual abuse awareness. That would be new to the Health and Safety Committee since we're adding that to the curriculum. An education consultant and Department of Industrial Relations representation.
okay. So I move that we accept the terms of how the committee will be made up of those members.
Second?
So if we could wait just 1 second,
Okay.
we can make it one last motion.
Oh, okay.
Because we also would want the board to adopt that we have 1-year appointments for committee members, that committee membership is not considered an employment with the state of California, and that they serve on a voluntary basis and don't receive salary, benefits of travel reimbursement. And then also, if the board would delegate authority to appointment of committee members and the ability to make changes to the group's compilation to the executive officer and all non-substantive changes, meeting dates, time, and location that may arise during the scheduling process.
I so move.
A second.
second.
Are there any public comment? You have to step.
Hi, my name is Caroline Barboza. I was just wondering how can I become a part of the committee, if there's any way?
We will put it on our website, and so watch our website, and it explains when we're accepting applications for committee membership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll have our vote, starting with my right.
Polly Cardenas, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. And on to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion and possible action of approving edits of the 2018 Health and Safety course.
Okay. So the health and safety course edits are in your packet. These edits, there's a listing on the cover memo of the edits that are included. And just to clarify, section 10 is being written, which is, I believe, the domestic and sexual harassment issue. That is still in process, and it'll come back in the May meeting.
Yeah, that's the comment that I wanted to make earlier, to make sure that it covers all genders.
Okay.
Okay,
I appreciate the removal of the second person, like, the second person voice. Sounds a little more formal now.
okay, if everyone has had a chance to review the edits, are there any additional questions or comments regarding them? Seeing none, I will make a motion to adopt the text revisions made to the health and safety course.
So
Second.
if I could make a
Oh, yes.
request that the motion be to make sure that the executive officer can make non-substantive changes.
Okay, so I move that we adopt the text revisions and that we allow our executive officer to make all non-substantive changes that may arise during the editing process.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any public comment? Oh, please.
Gary Federico again. It's actually not about the motion. I agree with, obviously, the motion. That this document is to be used in what capacity and where?
Schools are required to teach it.
Correct. Anywhere else?
Apprenticeship programs,
Okay, so other than training establishments, I imagine it's going to be published on the website as well?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not that crazy.
Good morning, Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. In section 9 about workers' rights, I still take issue with the term an establishment owner with employees may, and then the list of owner responsibilities, because may makes it sound like an option that owners file employment taxes on their employees and then everything else that follows, and I don't think may is the correct word.
Where are you on the workers' rights?
I wish I could tell you what page number it is, but it's like, these pages are not numbered.
Can you just tell us what's the first line at the top of
It's
the
at the top of
page?
the page.
What's the first line, does it say?
It says, an establishment owner with employees may.
Oh,
And then there's a checklist where it says file employment tax on all employees,
Oh,
prepare and file a W-2. Yeah. May is not the right word.
Well, first I want to see what it is,
Here.
because
It is page 1, 2, 3, 4. So,
I agree, and maybe changing the verb to should instead of may.
But click, the pages are not numbered, right?
Yeah, the pages aren't numbered, it's where it says questions.
Section 9. The sections are listed.
So section 9.
Did you find it, Jackie?
Page 4.
I did.
5 or 6 pages from the back.
Okay.
It's a little on, I'm gonna say, just because I've been spending a lot of time with attorneys and labor attorneys on language. And, you know, there's so many lists of how with employees that they can pay and do and work. Even with whether it's legal or not, that we, under us, but as establishment owner with employees and 1099, they can, is it correct? But, I mean, if you wanna change it, we can, but.
I just think it's misleading and it makes it seem like an option. So either we go all the way with this, or you step off and not pretend to be experts on labor law.
Okay, are there any additional comments? Okay, so we do have our motion on the floor, and seeing no additional comments, you need to know the motion again?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. So the motion was to adopt the edits and then to allow our executive officer to make any non-substantive changes.
Did we change that word?
I believe the note was made about the comment. Yes?
Do you think we should change May? I think we were advised to say May, but
We'll go with legal counsel then.
I mean, it's not our,
it's not our
it's
regulation.
technically not our area, the board's area that it regulates. So it's really up to the board. I don't see any possibility that we're gonna have the board be somehow responsible if a salon owner doesn't do these and they're required by law, because it's still a different area that we don't regulate, so there's no responsibility that would fall on this board. It's just whether the board feels that it perhaps might be misinforming the public by having this may. You could change it to something where, you know, that the establishment owner should consult with the proper regulatory entities regarding the following, : so that would be something where it wouldn't put it directly on the board to be the one to educate the establishment owners, but it's to actually have them check for themselves.
Because these are clearly 7 mandated items.
Right.
Okay,
I like that language.
I like that language as well.
So if you just want to edit that one, we could have the original maker of the motion just edit the motion to include that one edit to the document, and then if the second agrees with that, then you can have the vote.
Okay, so I'll edit my motion to include the additional language regarding an establishment owner's responsibility to consult with the proper
Regulatory entities.
regulatory
following.
entity regarding the following.
I second.
Okay, now, is there any additional public comment regarding the edited motion? Seeing none, we will vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cardenas, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coalition, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Now we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a report on our January 22nd Enforcement and Inspections Committee meeting from our chair,
That's me.
Mr. Frederico.
So the Enforcement Inspections Committee met on January 22nd, and we discussed the following items. We received an update on Inspector Language Access Protocol, and that all staff had been trained on the Language Access Protocol, as well as the protocol, as well as going forward, the protocol will be updated on a regular basis. We also discussed on how to address inspections workload with limited staff. And the staff reviewed various internal operations that are taking place to address the workload. And we also discussed the lack of applicants for our inspector positions. And we also asked the staff to update us at our next meeting with a timeline on working with the department on the hiring issues for the inspection classifications. So that was basically what we did in our Enforcement Inspections Committee on January 22nd.
Mr. Federico,
Thank you.
any questions, any comments regarding the report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the report from our chairperson from the Legislative and Budget Committee.
So that was Andrew,
Oh, yes.
but I do have the report for that, so I'll just give a brief report for him.
Okay.
So the committee again met on January 22nd. They discussed past legislation, which will actually also be discussed later on an agenda item for us today. They discussed legislative best practices and those meeting materials that were provided at the committee meeting are online. So if anyone's interested, they can certainly go online under that committee for January 22nd and look at some discussions or the information that was provided on legislative best practices. And then also legislative priorities, which the committee discussed school oversight as one of our top priorities. And then that committee will continue to look at that topic.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments regarding the report? Seeing none, we'll go on to our Licensing and Examination Committee.
I too am the chair of that one, and we also met on January 22nd, 2018. We had some lively discussion and debate during that meeting. Primarily we discussed about the risk assessment for the Personal Service Committee. And then finally, the committee ended up adopting a motion that asked staff to prepare regulatory language to implement the personal service permit. This language will be presented to the committee at the next meeting. And then we also discussed the report on the Blood-Borne pathogen training. And a report was submitted to the committee, and this report is available on our website for this committee meeting. The training is already part of the health and safety course, a majority of the training that was found there. So that is what we discussed on our Licensing Examination Committee.
Okay, is there any comment or questions regarding the report? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Education and Outreach Committee, which I am the chair of that committee. And we also met on January 22nd. And the committee discussed developing an outreach plan for consumers. The committee approved a motion that asked staff to bring information back to the committee on the development of a communications plan. And the committee was also provided with an update on industry outreach, which was discussed here, actually, with under Mrs. Underwood's, Miss Underwood's report as well. So that is all. Is there any comment or questions regarding the report? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward with our next item, which is discussion and possible action relating to certification of student hours. Ms. Underwood.
Yes, my favorite topic. So in your packets, you have a report, and it consists of lots of information that we have been looking at in our office over the last few months. It's been historic in this industry that there have been allegations of selling of hours for quite some time. I personally think it's worse right now than it ever has been. That was one of the reasons, as we mentioned earlier, that we saw the increase in application investigations. So kind of going through the information that's provided in your packet, I wanted to provide you some samples, information on why we feel this is so bad. So if you look at your packet, this is real information, but of course we don't want to disclose any names. So our first school, the number of candidates that they put through in 2017 for manicuring, for instance, was 358, as opposed to in 2015, 131, which is still quite high. So you can see that over the years, these numbers have been dramatically increasing. On the next page is another example. That school put through 298 candidates to take the manicuring examination. In 2016, they had put through 560. So this is showing where in mid-2017, we started questioning their applications more. So that's why those numbers are low. It shows that School A has 504 pending applications. School B has 290 applications. Those are applications that we feel their proof of training, which falls under our authority, are falsified.
Can I just ask a question? We're assuming that the school size and the number of training stations was the same between 2015 and 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I would say is impossible to
Right.
train that many people based on what they have, especially on the aesthetics and, there's no aesthetics room in their school.
Right. We have learned a lot, especially over just recently, the last few weeks, because when we started seeing these numbers, of course, this is referred to the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary, because they are in control of students. We have met with them. I will be meeting with their new bureau chief this week to talk further about this and what we can do together. But I think one of the items that was important in talking to the bureau is responsible for student harm. That's their mandate. We're consumer protection, they're student protection. Unfortunately, none of these students are complaining of harm. Many, as you'll see going further into this report, I took one school because then we started tracking where their home addresses, in a sense. And we found that multiple people are living in the same house, supposedly. Now, of course, you can have a lot of people living in one house, but not usually 50. So we found that. We found, obviously, you can see the numbers here. In this one particular school, we had 79 applicants that lived over 200 miles one way from the school.
Which they're, I'm guessing, daily.
Daily, so they're commuting 400-hour round trip, 400-mile round trip. And then many don't even live in California. Those are the people that have been really upset with us, calling, wondering why we haven't processed their applications, because they have paid. They pay to come out, they pay to, excuse me, they pay to rent a hotel to take the test. So they're essentially buying their hours in California. They live in another state. They come out here, they take the test. They pass it because they are being taught how to pass the test, and that's all they're being taught, is how to pass the test. So now we've started doing site visits. We've gone into these schools, not inspections, but actually site visits, where we're going in. It's in conjunction with an inspection. However, we inspect for health and safety. There's not a lot of health and safety even going on in some of these schools. Some of these schools don't even have a single product in the entire school. So we are going in and we're trying to talk to the individuals working in the schools to see what we can figure out and how we can determine it. Joseph's been kind enough to let some of my staff come over to his school to observe how a good school operates, and and that's not the only school we've done. We've actually done several other schools that we don't have any suspicions or allegations of selling of hours, and we've gone into those schools just to see how they operate, because one of the things, my staff's not professionals by any means in the school area, and we're finding that students in these schools, these problem schools, are starting at all times of the day. And when we think about school, we would assume you're pretty much starting at the same time. And not only are they starting at various times throughout the day, they're coming and going, and they start students every single day of the week. So 2 students start their class this day, and 5 start this day. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason over any of it. So in looking at all of this, we do think there is some areas that we could improve on from a board standpoint that the board should consider. One is, I think we've talked about in the past, is registering students at time of enrollment. That's how the board used to operate back prior to the Council for the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. The schools used to pay, I think, like $2 for a stamp, and they had to send in as soon as they enrolled a student. So we would have it in our system at the same time the student started school. So if they're applying for a test, a month later for a cosmetology course, we would know that there's no way they could have completed the course. That would take a statutory change. It's definitely something that I think we should consider. I don't know that it's the complete answer to that, because I think some of these schools are very savvy in how they are manipulating their data and their records. So, but it's definitely a start. And from what I hear, we didn't have this problem as bad back in those days when that practice was in place. We also could look at regulations, at what we could do regulatory to help prevent some of this. We went into a school recently and they were not tracking student hours at all. How do they track them? They track them. They told us they tracked them, but all their files were at home. So there was absolutely no tracking of student hours. When we asked to see their time clock, they showed us their time clock. It was in a box. It was not ever used. So they had the time clock because that's what we require. So we require minimum equipment. We go in, as soon as, if, for instance, a brand new school, we go out and we do an inspection to make sure they have minimum equipment. The minimum equipment they have there is a time clock. They have the time clock, but we don't have any provisions on how to use that time clock or how to track their student hours to prove that proof of training. It sounds a little like you wouldn't need that. However, there are various other states in this country that have very specific regulations on how the time clock should be used.
When you're referring to time clock and equipment, are you still referring to the old system that you?
Many schools have that.
I just want to point out that a lot of new companies don't use those machines anymore, and they use programs wherein you can just go online.
Yep.
And I want to just point out also that as you look into this, a lot of those programs do allow remote clock-in. They don't have to be physically in the location. So, just keep that in mind as you look into this based on some of the new programs.
As a school owner, we're recently actually in the process of updating our time clock software. And typically, what you're referring to, Coco, typically when it's like a remote clock in, that's usually notified in the clock stamp, like how it was, like whether there was like a physical, like in the building or used like remotely. So sometimes you can discern between that information.
Can I just add to that? And it can be programmed that while it allows for remote, that program, it can also disallow it within the school while they're programming.
Joseph, I have a question on that. Can it be edited, the time?
Times can be edited.
Yeah, it can be.
They can be, because there's always issues where, like, someone may forget to clock out or clock in, so stuff has to, so you have the access of adding it, but usually it shows, on our current time clock software that we have, when you make a manual edit, it highlights it in a specific color, so it looks like it's been manually edited.
And I also think that it tracks who made the
Yeah,
amendments.
and it tracks who makes those edits.
Yeah. For example, in my company, when I have to adjust time because someone forgot to clock in or something, it shows up that I was the one who did the adjustment.
There are other states that have requirements that students can't make those changes. It's in the regulations that it has to be someone within the designated from the school. They have requirements that have you document if the time clock was broken for the day. So there are regulations out there right now that exist for things like this that we might want to consider. I think there's other areas as well. For instance, we have our curriculum set in regulation, and what we're finding is that the schools just photocopy it and send it in. And that's the curriculum. So we don't have any lesson plans. We don't have a syllabus. We don't really know if they're teaching
A student catalog or any kind of
right,
consumer
and
guide.
that kind of gets into the BPPE area. So, but we do think we could at least require a lesson plan. And I say that, and one of our recommendations is to perhaps maybe the board decides today to create perhaps a task force, because again, this isn't really, it's not my expertise. That's why we've been visiting good schools to see how they're operating, because we also don't want to sit here and come up with a bunch of regulations that is going to give our fellow board member, a heartache over it, because there are lots of schools in California that are doing things great. But we have to figure out how we can address this issue, because it is so bad. And not only is it's bad for schools, the individuals that are going through this are being manipulated in a sense from people who are in charge of these schools. They're being taught to pass the test, so they feel they're minimally competent to go work in the industry, but they're not being taught about our laws and regulations at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're finding all of our finds. Right. We're going into these salons and nothing's labeled. One of the most basic information there, and they're not ever being taught that. So it is a disservice to them as well. And there are people who we have met with. There's even school owners who we have met with who do anything wrong.
Well, I have a couple questions. So when you guys when State Board goes out and does a site visit, and they come across a school that it looks like they're basically selling hours or is suspicious, then you refer that to the bureau, the BPPE.
Right.
Has what is the handoff like to the BPPE? Are you giving them all of your evidence that you've accumulated? And what is the BPPE's response, or do they have? Do they have a timeline that they're working from, or is it just kind of go into the black hole that is the BPPE?
Well, I don't know of their processes or their timelines. We provide them with our inspection reports. We also do get complaints. We often get complaints from instructors who have had it with the ownership of the school. And the problem is that if you don't act on those complaints right away, they tend to disappear. Those people who have gotten up the courage to come forward and kind of against their friend maybe, or their employer or ex-employer, whatever, they disappear very quickly and refuse to talk to us. So we do provide information to the Bureau. We aren't aware completely of how the Bureau handles that. I will say that the Bureau has a new Bureau Chief. We have met with the department, with our deputy directors, and talked about this already, and they have facilitated getting us on the same page with the Bureau. I know we've had many of those meetings in the past in my tenure here, but I have hope that the new Bureau Chief is going to make a difference in that. We really want to see their information. They do compliance inspections that I don't know what that means. So we're hoping to work with them to see what they're seeing and what we're seeing so that we can work more in partnership to stop the selling of hours.
Christy, could this also pertain to the reason why the Hispanics aren't passing the test? Maybe they're being sold the hours and not attending the schools? Could this be, are these schools located in these areas where,
I would say no. I don't think that that's the Spanish problem. I think we are unfortunately seeing it with the manicuring population being the worst.
Okay.
We do not see it, and it's not, we have had some, I don't believe we have seen any Spanish speaking in selling of hours. If it is, it's been minimal. We had a barber school a while back that we addressed, and actually that might have had some Spanish, but I don't personally think that it is part of the low passage rate.
Those that are being taught just to pass the exam are doing well.
Right.
So if the Spanish speakers were being taught to pass, they would be doing better.
Right. They are being
Gotcha.
taught very well to pass the exam.
So, I have a question. We require a proof of training, like, but you're saying that if us, for like a registration, for a student registration, that requires statutory?
Yes.
You can't, like, if we already require proof of training, can't the proof of training start on their first day? I mean, then can't that be solved through regulatory?
I don't believe so. I think it's something that could be argued.
I mean, it's like, I feel like, when you're asking for a statutory change, very rarely do we ever get that.
I think right now, I personally think we will have more success with a statutory change.
Okay.
Coming up for sunset than we would for a regulatory change. Our regulations process is lengthening, unfortunately. There's a lot more extensive reviews in the regulatory process, so we're looking at a lot longer.
That used to be what we'd say a year, correct? And then we said statutory was like, 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Okay. So what is that lengthening process going to on the regulatory?
I think a minimum of 2 years.
Wow.
I could be wrong.
Christy, I have a question. The BPPE, what do they don't have reports that are online that you can see of what they're doing? I mean, isn't this a concern for them since they regulate the schools? Why isn't this more of a fire for them, if you will?
Well, I do think it's a concern. We recently did meet with, I met with the department's executive team, the Bureau, our Division of Investigation, because they're involved as well. And I do think they're concerned. I don't know their processes and I certainly don't know their laws of what they look for. It's very different than what we look for. But I am hoping that we can get more information from them.
Can we invite the BPPE to a state board meeting?
Do they do a state board meeting?
Can we invite them?
Oh, absolutely.
Into a state board meeting
Absolutely.
and kind of have have this as be an agenda item and ask them their process so that the board understands that.
And
Idea.
and I assume your comments are being very charitable, aren't? That's my opinion.
I will.
No comments necessary.
I just don't want to slow it down, though. To me, this is the most important agenda item on the meeting today. And I want to compliment staff on doing an excellent job of putting together a document that really proves multiple areas where there is just obvious fraud. And it's not only fraud in it by itself, but it's a slap in the face of tens of thousands of licensees that don't spend time with their family because they're studying or at school, or don't spend enough time at work, or spend 1,600 hours doing these. These are the people that we also have to report to on this. So we have to take action and we have to do something with teeth. That's why I'm very much in favor of putting together a working group to start right away attacking the situation.
And I do want to mention that with all our limitations that we do have, because the proof of training is an official document that has the start date and the end date, a sign from the signature from the school, and that's it. So it's, this all started by our staff who are processing the applications, seeing multiple applications come in for the school. And with Carrie Harris is here today, who's our enforcement manager, with her staff catching on and then realizing that we can't in good conscience let these people take the test because we know they didn't we know they didn't go to school. But with our limitations, we have had, I think, some success. We have had students that have just voluntarily withdrawn their applications because we have called them on the carpet. We have asked them the questions that we feel they should know, and they aren't able to answer the questions. Some students cannot even say the name of the school they attended. And once they know that
neighboring
we are onto it,
businesses.
they're withdrawn. They
No.
can't tell us neighboring businesses, they can't tell us a classmate's name.
How did you get to talk to them? Was it because they were following up on their applications? That's when the opportunity comes up?
Yes. And we've also sent out questionnaires to individuals, and we've talked to individuals at the examination site.
Well, and I also want to tag on to you, Steve, what you were saying too. This is what's eroding our industry, though. I mean, once they get into now the working world, this is the kind of, employee, individual
Right.
that's representing our industry and making it
Right.
where we're looking at deregulation, and
Yeah.
it's just such at that point, it's
Yes.
hard to conduct business,
And it's nationwide.
I know.
This is a nationwide problem. When I went back last August, I went to the National Committee conference in West Virginia, and everybody had the same discussion. We have states calling us all the time, asking us about specific schools.
So is this partly because we have the national exam? So because if someone has from another state and has already practiced and has already passed this exam, then it probably would be pretty easy to pass the exam. But then we have reciprocity, so it almost makes no
Right.
sense for that.
I think we have not very strict regulations when it comes to schools. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, what can we do? Let's fix it.
I'm just wondering, would it benefit us in any way to send this report and memo to the legislators?
I definitely think in our sunset review, it's going to be probably our biggest topic. So probably, I think it'll be much more extensive than this report. We have been talking about this for many years with legislative staff, and
Is it unique to California that we have the board and the bureau? Is it the same in
Yes.
other states?
No.
it's most other boards regulate their own schools.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, we have some public comment.
Fred Jones, Professional Beauty Federation, California. Thank you, President Williams. I think Mr. Weeks is exactly right. I don't think I commented on any other agenda item today other than at the beginning to announce our WOW. This is the most important issue, I think, facing our license. And if there are some policymakers that are considering delicensing us, the stakes couldn't be any higher. And without boring you, I did provide Ms. Underwood some legal references. It's my contention and hope that this board would move forward with a regulation package to require student registration
Yep.
upon enrollment. And if someone along the process says you don't have the statutory authority, so be it. Parallel to that, I recommend what your executive officer has recommended, that you pursue statutory authority. So in other words, do both now, especially since your rate packages are taking over 2 years to adopt. But I just want to read you a couple lines in the code, the law, the statute that the policymakers put in law, not your regulations. You're tasked with, quote unquote, the protection of the public. So Ms. Underwood had already stated that BPPE says that they're in the business of protecting the student. You're in the business of protecting the consumer. If the students don't mind being defrauded, because they're the ones paying for the money to pay for these fraudulent POTs, then I think it has a direct bearing on consumer protection.
Absolutely.
So I do think that very broad mission given to you to protect the consumers of beauty and barbering services provide a significant statutory toehold to justify a more complete proof of qualifications. And that's the next phrase I wanted to read. Each application, this is for the license exam, shall be accompanied by the required fee and shall contain, quote unquote, this is the key part, proof of the qualifications of the applicant for examination. And from that, you develop the regulations on POTs. Proof of qualifications mean all 1,600 hours. The first hour through the 1,600th hour. How can you have proof of that if you don't require student enrollment at the beginning? Especially given the information staff has provided you in these couple of instances. Another key phrase, completed a course in cosmetology. It says that in barbering, it says that in electrology as well. Completed a course. That's a statutory reference. And then later, a full course in cosmetology. So these are all phrases that the state legislature has put in the Business and Professions Code, giving you, I believe, clear statutory authority in light especially of the facts that you ought to move forward immediately on a regulation requiring all students to enroll, all students who enroll in the school to be registered with your board within 30 days of enrollment. Simple as that. Shifting gears, this packet, and I assume it seems like you're going to be moving toward a task force. I wouldn't wait for the task force report. I would move forward on proposing regulations today. Nevertheless, there are some opportunities for your board to work with someone other than the BPPE, an organization that actually does their job. And that is a national accreditation body. Most of our schools want to be able to qualify for Title IV loans for their students.
Right.
In order to do that, you have to be accredited with the United States Department of Education approved accrediting agents. The main one is NACUS. NACUS has all of the requirements that staff have listed in your proposed regulations and then some. And believe me, they can make a school's life miserable. Even the good schools can feel the heat of these accrediting agencies. So I would strongly encourage your board and your staff to develop much closer working relationships with those accrediting agencies. And finally, let me just say this, and it's a genuine bone I want to throw to your staff. You guys don't receive any fees or fine revenues from schools. Everything that you see before you, all of the due diligence of your staff, they're doing it within their existing resources. They're not paid to do this for any school. That's BPPE's job. Schools pay tens of thousands of dollars to BPPE every year for the privilege of having a BPPE license, including those schools that are fraudulently selling hours, and we all know it. So everything that's being proposed for your staff to do, you're going to have to eat the cost within your existing budget. That's another problem with this dual oversight insanity. Put the license and the revenues in your hands so that you can beef up your staff to do what's necessary to both protect students and to protect consumers. I will caution you, however, until you have those resources and staff, I am always leery about new regulations and new powers given to your board because I don't want to be in a situation where they're going to be in writing only. So enforceability has to be a key component of any new regulation package you create. Enforcing a student registration is easy. You get it within 30 days, and then 10 to 12 months later, you see if they match when they get their final POT. That's easy. These other things aren't as easy. Will require staff inspection, time, etc. I would caution you against creating any regulation that you don't have the resources to enforce. Because if you have a regulation on the book that isn't enforced, all of the regulations become suspect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline Barboza again. I'm opening a barber college, and the whole reason behind my opening a barber college is because what you're talking about right now, the lack of professionalism, ethics, management skills, education, period, in the workforce. I'm a working barber. But I think a good solution is to let the students know that they can file a complaint with the BPPE if they feel that they're not getting proper education, so on and so forth. If they know more of their rights, because they do have rights as a student, they're the ones paying, and they are the ones getting cheated out of an education and a great career. So I'm just, maybe you guys can take that into consideration too, that all students, mandatory, should be let known that they can file a complaint with the BPPE themselves.
Thank you.
As part of the current regulations that the BPP does require, there is a couple of things that students are required to complete prior to starting school. One of them is basically the statistics for the school in its previous few years in regards to the program that they're taking, as well as something else called a notice of student rights, which they do initial, which basically states that at any time if they ever have any problem with their school, that they can notify the BPPE, stating that students just sign it and don't ever read it.
Christy, so my question in regards to that, I'm gonna assume these students know what they're doing. And they're doing it, knowing they're just, and I'm gonna assume these schools are not trying to get accredited.
Absolutely.
Because the loans aren't gonna be, they're just paying out of pocket, paying them like a couple
Right.
$100.
We have a
Boom, do
list
this.
of, is it 16 schools that we have concerns with right now? Okay, 25. We did just last week realize that one is an accredited school. So we are going to reach out to NACAS. They are accredited by NACAS, but it's just one. None of the rest of them are
Because accredited. it's hard to get recognized. You have to have so many millions. I know, I have friends as well that are school owners.
They're charging $1,200 for a cosmetology course.
Okay, that's what I assume. So the student is aware of what they're doing in the school, they're just trying to all make a quick buck.
Jamie Marasco, that's my maiden name because I've been referring back to 1991. Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. In 1991, before I was Schrabeck and Marasco, I paid less than $200 to buy the kit that enabled me to go to a manicuring course at what was then a career college in Seaside. Those of you who've been around for a while might remember the name Career College. And I was part of the ROP program and was able to get that training. It was only 350 hours at the time, and now manicuring is 400. And at the time, we had lots to complain about in terms of the quality of the education. So the fact that you brought up that point, thank you. But we realized then that complaining about the quality of the education wasn't going to get us anywhere because it was always about the money, and it still is about the money. So fast forward to 2005, and I have an employee who's a receptionist who was going to get trained to be a manicurist so she could start providing services in my salon, and I ended up having to fire her when I caught her bragging one day about clocking in and then going shopping when she was supposed to be at school. It's the same location, but at that point it wasn't Career College anymore. It was Monterey Bay Beauty College. 2 years later, my sister, who's another person who became an employee of mine, attended the school. She was told that she had to pay a $1,000 facilities fee, even though she was still there under the ROP program. And fast forward to the end of her course, which she passed, and she did attend school. I know this for a fact. We ended up complaining to the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, which was then endorsing that school for the ROP program. And we got them this time because, in fact, they were selling hours. The instructor was walking around with time cards in her pocket, and she was clocking people in and out. And we got them because of the money, because that college was defrauding the federal government of dollars. And so I just want to say that I am both disturbed by this 4 pages of document, but in a way it's kind of reaffirming everything we've thought for a long time, and I credit the staff for working so hard on this. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are witnesses out there, people who either participated or at least witnessed other people doing this, and I think they're frustrated. I know my sister was frustrated to see what was happening, so much so that she was able to get the district to cut off that school, and that program ended. That school later became Marinello School. We all know what happened there. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, on the other side of the coin too, makes it doubly worse. About 2 weeks ago, I met a young lady, Hispanic girl in her early to mid-20s with one child that was going to cosmetology school in Los Angeles. Now, she had to sell her car, her only piece of transportation she had, because she couldn't work and go to school at the same time because of the hours involved in that. So here's someone that really gives up a piece of their life to play by the law and do the right thing. It just makes it doubly more frustrating to hear of all these other abuses.
Yes.
Hi, Gary Federico. Historically speaking, prior to 1989, our agency, our total agency as a school owner was under the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. It actually was a different name at the time. And then as of 89, on the 5 seconds to 12, we got swept under to this other agency. It wasn't called the BPE, it was called the Bureau, whatever it was, similar to BPE. And since 1989, which is now about 18 years down the road, and I hope Miss Underwood is right, that she is talking to, let's see, who said the new sheriff in town? Somebody did to me a few years ago, but the point is that in 18 years, all we did as a school was to pay him $25,000 a year, except for last year, they dropped it to about $18,000 a year. And they will come in and do a compliance audit, and then they'll come in and do another audit or a desk audit. We'll send them hours upon hours on hours of paperwork, which they'll sit on their desk, and they never do respond. This is the BPE. And the hundreds to probably thousands of complaints that I know that Ms. Underwood probably sent them will just sit nowhere or go into the dark hole. It's a useless agency for us in every way, shape, or form. Like I say, they take our money and they don't do anything. They, again, as I stated earlier, they're like an agency that's out there to indirectly to deregulate us. Due to the fact, as you just saw with Ms. Underwood in her report of all the schools, she identified 25 schools that are possibly selling paper. That's a lot to me, but it's out there. But they don't do anything about it. So we need to protect ourselves again in every way, shape, or form. But this agency, the BPE, they're worthless in every way, shape, or form. And again, we have 18 years with them, but they have never, ever done anything to help strengthen our schools in any way, shape, or form. So, I just wanted to throw a little history out there. And under what Mr. Jones has stated, under regulations, we had similar regulations at one time about how to clock in, how to clock out. We had a lot of similar regulations. And I strongly suggest that you do follow Mr. Jones's thought process. NACIS is a bull in regards to what they want out of a school. I'm sure we could strip a lot of that stuff, apply it in a quick fix way and see if we can get it through. Because we can't wait 2 years or 3 more years, because 25 will grow to 50. And that's more money being used. And obviously, I would imagine that the applications won't be processed, and again, it just hurts us more and more and more. Once we resolve that problem of taking care of the schools, getting them back up to where the health that they need to be, then we can work on other problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? So at this time, we can make a motion, correct? Regarding the recommendations?
I make a motion. I'd like to move that we do follow the registration, the registration program, and I do like Fred Jones of basically running it concurrently through a regulatory and a statutory process. That way, if we can basically figure out which is the easiest path to go forward with that.
I second.
I just want to clarify, that's for them starting school and sending in when they start?
Yes, starting on
So we can
registration.
start that now?
Yes.
We can look into it.
Yeah, we
Right,
can look
begin
into
to look
creating
into
the regulation to
pursue.
start the registration.
Okay.
And then in addition, I do believe, is this also part of it that we can set up a task forces? I do believe we do need to also set up a task force and move forward with continuing kind of like looking at this and seeing the size and scope of this problem.
Do we need a second resolution? Are you by attaching the two? Are you telling the task force to do that?
I'm trying to amend. Can I amend my original to include basically the dual lane registration between statutory and regulation, as well as setting up the task force. So it's like basically a three-prong attack. And then,
Look at that.
also, if we pursued that as a bill, would we also need a regulation adoption after it passed? So
Yeah, it depends on how the
how
statute would be
okay.
written.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded.
Can I just ask that, how would you like this task force created? Would you like to delegate that to your executive officer?
I would love to delegate that to my executive officer.
Is that right?
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing no additional public comment, I will go for a vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cordnes, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Also, time frame. What sort of time frame do you see in this process? Like for assembling a task group, task force?
Oh, it's gonna, I don't know how we get that on minutes, but,
Snap, snap.
Generally there, yeah.
I would definitely anticipate us having something coming back to the board at our next meeting, but this is kind of consuming some of us at our office, so I think we'll be getting to the drawing board right away and have a very good report at our next board meeting.
Great.
Excited.
I'd also encourage, whether it's the next state board meeting or whether it's the first task force meeting, is to try to get some representation from BPPE there. So that we can-
And definitely we can do that.
Is it also beneficial for us, at least at our next board meeting, to invite the agency that does the accreditation? Is that the
Accreditation.
correct word?
Accreditation?
Yes, of the schools. I don't know what agency that is, to invite them to come to us and share their experience or our comments to them.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, I wanted to ask, do you want to take a quick 10-minute break
Yes,
before we go
please.
through
Yes, please.
everything else? Okay, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We can continue with the items on our agenda, and we are on agenda item 18. Discussion and possible action regarding proposed changes to the board's Know Your Workers' Rights publication.
So this is the packet that licensees must acknowledge when they renew or apply for a license, and we have just made some changes to that. There's a cover memo that lists the changes. It's been some minor changes, the title, some grammatical corrections that we've made, changing the words shop / salon to establishment. Some piece rate versus commission pay information was added, and some new photos were added as well.
Nice. Go ahead, Coco.
Here I go on photographs again. Is there a better photograph that we can get for the cover? It's just really a bad manicure job that there are, by the tip here, all those areas that are not painted.
Yes,
Or at
we
least
have talked about that.
Let's Photoshop this.
You will see a new cover soon.
Is there a reason why we always use so many photos? I'm just curious.
Why we always use the
Photos for the design? Because for my preference is actually just to not have photos. But, yeah. Design wise. Because I think the photos kind of date it. Just a
Or at least
opinion.
on the cover.
So are there any additional questions? Go
Are we
ahead.
required to approve this? Do we need to approve it? We'll make it with with any unsubstantiative changes to be made? All right, so I push forward a motion. Yeah, I push forward a motion that to approve this, and then the executive officer can make any unsubstantiative changes, which includes photography.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, public comment.
Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. I am the one who commented about the cover a while ago, so thank you. I thought I was the only one. If we could make the same change that we made to the other document, now I could give you a page number on page 4, where it's got that same terminology as an establishment owner with employees may. If you could adopt the same language that you adopted earlier in the meeting about consulting with the proper governmental agencies or entities or whatever that wording was exactly.
Sure.
That would be helpful. I agree with removing the photos because it does date it and it also makes it seem like less serious. And another thing I'd like to add is that recently I was at the Ice Long Beach show. I'm usually there teaching every year, which I was this time again, but there were 2 presentations, one specifically presented by the Professional Beauty Association, which was one of the sponsors of SB 490. It was a most unfortunate presentation in that it was so confusing to those that were in attendance. And I thought in this, all of this got lost. This whole issue of hourly versus piece rate versus commission. There were things that were said in that meeting that I thought were, excuse me, it was a class actually, that I thought were not appropriate considering that there were no representatives there from the DIR or the EDD when there should have been. So my concern is that as much effort as we're putting into this, this is not going to be finalized yet because I still can't get clear answers. And it's someone like me who's very invested in this and has had employees for a long time. With my level of education and my involvement, if I can't understand it and I can't get clear and consistent answers from lawyers at the DIR, how is the average licensee with perhaps just a high school education going to check that box and really mean it when they renew their license? Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe my amended, or I don't think I need to amend my second.
Amend your motion to
Well, I believe
have us duplicate that language for the May.
I could also consider that an unsubstantiative change, right?
Is it?
And it is, so
Yeah.
amend your motion.
All right, I'm gonna amend my motion to include the new language.
I second.
Okay, yes, public comment.
Thank you. Fred Jones, Professional Beauty Federation, California. So I was debating whether I'd come up here to talk about this one little section on page 7, dealing with piece rate versus commission wages, but somebody inspired me to come up here. Yeah, I am an attorney, but I'm not a labor law attorney. Therefore, I only play one on TV. But this area of the law dealing with commission is confusing, and that's unfortunate because it has been the practice since time immemorial in this industry to pay employees on a commission basis. Essentially, California outlaws commissions for people receiving commissions on services they personally render. So if I'm selling someone's pest control services over the phone, someone else does the pest control spraying, I can get a commission. If I'm the pest controller, I cannot get a commission as an employee of the company for doing that service. That strikes home here because obviously we are a service-oriented industry. So, according to my limited understanding of labor law, commissions are illegal in our industry with 2 exceptions. One is the piece rate law, which requires a good bit of tracking your employees' productive time, where they are getting a piece of the action, if you will, and their non-productive and rest time, where they're not earning that piece for their service. And then doing a calculation to make sure that they are going to be paid equivalent amount between their productive time and their non-productive time. And the policy behind that is the legislators, the policymakers, did not want to give a perverse incentive to employees to work all 8 hours straight and never take their legally obligated breaks. So that's the good policy reason behind that. Now with the passage of SB 490 Bradford last year, went into effect this January, there's a second exception to the complete ban on commission wages. But it requires, and it's going to be in very rare circumstances, it requires a stylist to be paid twice the minimum wage for every hour they work. Then on top of that, they can receive a commission. So in 2022, that's $30 an hour. So maybe 3, 4, tops 5% of salons will ever have that kind of revenue to justify those commissions. I spoke with one, in fact, just Thursday. Beverly Hills. So, I mean, I could point on a map where there's a 5% of salons that can afford to pay twice the minimum wage, then commission, and that does not include tips, which in California, tips are completely 100% the separate property of the employee the moment they're earned and cannot be mixed in on wages in any way, shape, or form. So it is a convoluted situation to be in as an industry that has historically relied upon commission wages as a primary means of paying stylists. And you have basically 3 paragraphs devoted to that topic. I think it's mostly okay, although one could imply that commissions are still appropriate in a couple of lines there. But it's complicated and it's moving, and we'll see what policymakers do in the future. But that's the best that I can do. And by the way, I will have an article in next month's Stylist, California Stylist, on this very subject, trying to clarify, hopefully, more than confuse.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we do have a motion, so I'm going to call for a vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cardenas, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Kirk-Olishin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. And we will move forward with our next item on the agenda regarding our legislative update. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
Okay, so first we are just going to give you an update on legislation that was chaptered, AB 326, which is the bill that allowed the board to promote physical and sexual abuse awareness, and also to include it in our health and safety training course. We are currently working on that, and you can expect to see that at the May board meeting for the new addition to the health and safety course. AB 1516 was non-substantive changes. It was clarifying the California Healthy Nail Collaborative when they approve their salons for healthy nail salons, that they are also free of fines related to our board. We already work with them, so there was no implementation that we needed to do for that. AB 1615 requires the board to include an informational pamphlet, which is required to be created by the Department of Consumer Affairs, that explains the Gender Tax Repeal Act of 1995. That document is being created. We have not seen it yet. We're required to implement this not until January 1 of 2019. We do know that the department is working on that, and we will share it with the board when it becomes available. SB 490 is the commission wage bill. This did not have any impact to how we work, so we or just reporting that, but we didn't have any impact that we needed to do. SB 547, which was a clarification for our apprentice licenses under the supervision of a licensee. It was to help us in disciplinary matters. We already work that way, so there was no impact to us on that. Any questions on any of that? Then we can move on to proposed legislation that we have right now. And we have first up AB 767, which is the Master Business Licenses Act. It creates a new organization, government entity that establishes the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. That's existing, and this will create basically a one-stop shop in the governor's office for people who are looking to get a business license. There's a significant fiscal impact. It doesn't directly impact our board. It impacts all of California business licenses, so there's an impact, but it's to everyone. It's not just specific to us. The board can take a position on this. It's definitely something I would recommend we watch.
Any questions or a motion? Well, I move that we watch the bill.
I second.
Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, I'll call for a vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cordes, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, so our motion to watch the bill passes.
Okay, our next bill is AB 1575. This is a bill that we've seen before. It's the cosmetic labeling bill. It would require professional cosmetic manufacturers on or after July 1, 2019 to have a label that satisfies all labeling requirements necessary for other cosmetic pursuant to the Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act and the Federal Fair Packaging and Labeling Act. The board in the past had taken a position of support if amended because we wanted the term professional to make sure that it included the practice of electrology because that was left out. But other than that, there isn't an impact to our board. It's just something we are watching because it impacts the industry.
Is that going to be included as part of inspection also or not?
I'm sorry?
Is that going to be included as part of inspection requirements?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so we just need a motion to approve it now that we've amended the language.
You can maintain the same motion or position that you've had in the past, which is the support if amended if we clarify that the practices includes electrology.
And they haven't clarified that yet.
Right.
Oh, they have not clarified it.
So do
Okay.
we actually have to make any motion whatsoever then? Can we just like leave it alone?
So no.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions or comment from any of the board?
The next bill on the agenda is SB 296, which is the manicuring scope of practice bill that you do not have this in your packet. It's the manicuring scope of practice that included
The
waxing, and that bill has been pulled by the author. Our next bill is SB 715, which I believe we have seen in the past, and that is removal of board members for failing to attend board meetings. I believe in the past, we didn't take a position on this in the past. It's just a bill, I think it comes up every year, and we usually watch it.
Okay.
So you don't have to take a position. And that's it for legislation.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Next, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 20, proposed regulations.
So we have a lot of regulation packages out there right now, and we have a cover memo in your packet that we thought we'd have more actions to bring forward, but we do not. So today we are actually only asking for an action on one packet. The remaining packages, we believe will have more information at our next board meeting, which will likely require the board to hopefully approve new language that we will be presenting at our next meeting. So the only regulation package today that is in need of a decision is the packet for 974.3, which is the citing of establishments for individuals and the owners and the individuals for the same violation. So there's been a lot of discussion on the language that was previously approved by this board. And to make it clear, we have come up with new language. This is separate from the packet that was online. There is information at the table if you did not get that, and then we've provided it to the members, where we've listed by each violation that we cite for who it can apply to. Because there are some violations that would only apply to an owner. There are some that would only apply to an individual. And then there is the determining factor of when it would apply to both. So you'll see now the language that is up for you to approve today, if you so desire, has a definition after each violation who it could apply to.
I did have a question about the insufficient disinfectant. How it states that it applies to the establishment owner. The insufficient 978A5, the insufficient disinfectant, it only says that it will apply to the establishment owner, but in some establishments, there may be individuals with insufficient disinfectant at their stations. So I think that might be one that might apply to both the individual and the establishment owner.
So the reason why it says that is in the regulations themselves. 978, let me get to it real quickly.
The language is that the establishment shall maintain, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's like the establishment shall maintain.
So there's not a requirement that you have to have those at the stations, first of all. But 978 is minimum equipment and supplies. And the regulation starts off by reading, establishments and schools shall have and maintain the following minimum equipment and supplies. So the regulation really only applies to establishments and schools.
So then if there is, okay, so my question then is if there's like, everyone has their own individual disinfectant at their station, but one of them happens to be insufficient, then that would apply just only to the establishment owner and rather than the individual, even though they have the proper amount of disinfectant at every other station.
That would be a different violation.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So are you saying if everybody has a jar?
Yes.
And one of them's dirty?
And one of them happens to be dirty, or one of them happens to,
insufficient.
or the
Half
comb,
full.
yeah, the comb's sticking halfway out. Would that fine only then apply to the establishment owner, or would it apply to the individual?
That would be a violation of, I believe, 979.
Okay.
Right, so the disinfectant solution has to remain covered at all times. So that's a violation of 979.
No, not that it has a cover on it, but I have a comb inside the disinfection. The top of it's covered, but the solution's halfway.
Still 979 though. It's still 9794, totally immersed.
Okay, just making sure.
You have to have
794, I don't see that.
Like in the back of all my salons, I have a big
Mhm.
as well as they have upstairs.
I guess my concern, I'm just thinking, I'm putting my DRC hat on, is because so many establishment owners have independent contractors or booth renters, therefore you have those situations where the individual booth renter will have the disinfectant solution on their station, and then the establishment owner will get the violation, and they're like, this person didn't have their disinfectant full, where to Joe's point, maybe all the other renters or people in the establishment did, and then therefore.
Right, so in that case, the owner's not going to be cited.
I just want to, yeah. 'Cause
Individual is, because they let their jar either be not full enough or dirty or uncovered. That's an individual. If the individual is there,
They're cited.
they're cited, not the owner.
I
If
just
the
wanna make-
individual's not there, the owner's still responsible.
And I just want to make sure that is like clearly understood by our inspectors, because sometimes they will cite for the wrong citation in regards to
So
that.
it's really gonna fall on our cite and fine staff within the office.
Okay.
So,
We have some public comment.
Yeah, I just have a question. It's in regards to Gary Federico, in regards to, yes, the Pureness is a salon that's strictly independent contractors, but what happens if you have independent contractors and employees? And the independent contractors has their own individual jars, but again, you have employees there. So wouldn't it make sense that and it says when you read the law, the establishment and schools. So I would have to say, to be really sure that the salon should still have a sanitizer in their dispensary to cover that base. So if you have independent contractors and they got the individual jars, no big deal. But if you've got an employee there, those independent contractors' jars really does not apply to them, but the disinfectant in the dispensary or somewhere else by the salon would qualify, right?
it absolutely would.
Okay.
Because we don't specify independent contractors anywhere.
Right.
And we also don't specify that the disinfectant has to be at the station, in the back room, both.
Right.
It just has to be there.
Right.
So basically, what we're basically outlining is that it's the owner's responsibility to maintain at least like the minimum standard of disinfectant, whatever the individual does at their own station, as long as the salon maintains basically one like full disinfectant, one full thing for disinfectant, it should qualify.
Because I'm just projecting myself into the future at a
Yeah.
DRC hearing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Just like, how am I going to
and having
negotiate
someone
this?
argue that this was at their station, why am I getting the violation when the rest of my staff or renters, their disinfectant was full enough to immerse, but I got cited because there was one in the establishment
So
that wasn't.
I think we need to remember that we're talking two different violations.
Okay,
One, that the disinfectant has to be there.
right,
That's the owner's responsibility,
Yeah, that's
no
what-
matter what.
Okay.
right.
It is today, it is tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
If it's dirty, or if there's anything wrong with that disinfectant, right, and it's on a person's station,
Then it
and that
becomes the-
person's there,
Okay.
whether they're an independent contractor or an employee, that person is responsible for letting that jar on their station get dirty,
So would it
not the owner.
So would it help that we borrow some of the language under some of the other violations where it says violation applies to establishment owner may apply to the individual under that particular violation?
No, because when we go back to, again, I think we're
Get that
confusing
978.
those two violations.
Okay.
The 978 is strictly having it.
Okay,
979 is making sure it's clean, making sure it's full, making sure all your tools are immersed.
okay,
978 is not, it's not just, you have to have one closed container for hair.
right, okay.
That's the establishment and the school's responsibility, that per the regulation. It doesn't have anything to do with our fine schedule and how we're assessing anything. That's how it is today.
Okay. I understand.
I'm also glad to see that there was some financial teeth put into the interference with inspection area. That desperately needed.
Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. Now I'm confused. So I am reading 978A5 as what Joseph's talking about with the insufficient disinfectant. So, and I'm hearing Ms.
In
Underwood talk
container.
about 979 being insufficient, like if we're talking about the jar that doesn't have enough solution in it to actually completely immerse.
You're correct.
Okay,
You're correct.
okay, so
But under 979, it has to be totally immersed. So if there's tools in there that aren't totally immersed,
Because 978A5 says insufficient disinfectant in container for total immersion.
So that could be where you could add that an individual may be fined as well for that particular circumstance that's being described.
well, we're gonna fine them 979. We're not gonna fine them.
Okay.
We don't do that now.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it, got it, got it. It's just confusing because
Yeah.
that's where I would look for.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that cite and find like it's completely understands like what the difference between those two things.
I'm gonna take a total step back. 7317 that the unlicensed individual is gonna get fined and not the establishment owner? I mean, wouldn't that be the first thing you'd ask for if you were either hiring someone or renting a?
No, an unlicensed salon gets cited 7349. It's a different violation for employing unlicensed people.
That's another issue, employing. We call it, is it?
Anyone working in a salon that doesn't have a license, we cite 7349 to the owner.
Okay, but the issue I have there is, you could argue that a booth renter is not an employee, so it's allowing an unlicensed individual to work in your establishment.
We hear that all the time in DRC and it never holds.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, more public comment? Oh, no public comment, okay. Is there any additional public comment at this time? So we need a motion to adopt this. Are there any additional questions from the board? Okay,
The motion should be to adopt the language and ask staff to pursue a 45-day notice for a regulatory package.
okay, so I move that we adopt the proposed language and move forward with a 45-day note.
Hold on, if I could just make it really clear, so we
Okay.
have this for the Office of Administrative Law. The motion would be to move to adopt the proposed regulatory language for noticing and set for hearing. That should cover everything. Then if you also want to delegate authority to the executive officer to make any non-substantive or technical changes.
I so move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any additional comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll move for a vote, starting to my right.
Polly Cornish, yes.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Lisa Tong, yes.
Joseph Federico, yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes.
Coco Lashin, yes.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. And we're going to move forward with our next item on the agenda. Oh,
Oh, my God.
we did it. Agenda items for the next meeting. So are there any particular agenda items we would like to see for our next meeting?
Well, as earlier stated, to invite the agency that does the school accreditation.
Yes. Any additional agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward with public comment. Yes?
On the agenda item, if I may. but-
Yes.
So I had the privilege of spending 2 days with Christy and her staff, 1 day with Christy, 2 days with her staff, dealing with the 1,600-hour cosmetology review. And something that we unanimously agreed upon, but it won't be included in our recommendations because it was beyond the scope of that working group, was for your board to consider creating a hairstylist license. And there's lots of reasons for that, but one of them is, as you are aware, there's a movement, a national movement to undo licenses. And Barbering and Cosmetology, I think because they start with B and C, are always at the top of the list of the state-required licenses that talk show hosts and others ridicule. So anything we can do within your mission of protecting consumers of barbering and beauty services to alleviate some of that stress would be helpful. And one of those things is, since 92% of cosmetologists in their occupational analysis say that they just deal with hair, they're not dealing with skin or nails, maybe it's time for the board to consider adopting a new license category just for hairstylists. So it's probably more appropriate to go to your licensing committee, but I just wanted to bring that up because it seemed like it had, Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, support from all of us in that working group.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, John Moreno from Bixby Barber College. Good to see you all again. So we're looking forward to, again, seeing you all on the Barbering Committee, and I'm just very happy to see all the different works. Just wanted to add that going into your next meeting, and again, looking forward to seeing the board grow and do different things. Just wanted to add that into the meeting, and if y'all need any help, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment at this time?
Gary Federico, I've just failed to mention this, but next Sunday, we're having a barber battle. We're hosting right over across the street at Federico Beauty Institute. Starts from 12, goes to about 6. Please join us and have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we are going to officially adjourn our meeting.